People vanish in America's forests, deserts, and mountains, and the reports look disturbingly similar. Same patterns, same last sightings, same silence. Hikers step off trails and are never seen again. Phones die, footprints stop, search teams find nothing. Maps show gaps that shouldn't exist. Records repeat the same details, year after year. Officials rarely explain why. Families wait. Questions multiply. What is happening in places meant to be empty, quiet, and safe? The report begins at the trailhead. A disappearance in a U.S. wilderness area is first recorded in ordinary ways. A vehicle stays at a pullout longer than expected. A person misses a planned check-in. A ranger station receives a call that sounds small, then repeats. By the time a formal report is typed, details have already shifted into standardized language. Last known point, clothing, water carried, direction of travel, weather, and who else was present. On the 14th of June 1969, a 6-year-old boy, Dennis Martin, vanished near Spence Field in Great Smoky Mountains National Park during a family camping trip. He was last seen near the Appalachian Trail, behind brush beside the trail, during a game with other children. When he did not reappear, the adults searched nearby and then sent for help. The search expanded into steep slopes and narrow drainages where visibility collapses within a few yards. Roughly 1,400 people participated, and officials later described the effort as the largest in that park's history. Rain and mist arrived early in the search period, and the presence of so many searchers complicated tracking in soft ground. Weeks later, the case remained open without a confirmed trace. That case sits far back in time, but its administrative shape is familiar. Search and rescue on federal lands produces repeated paperwork patterns, even when the final outcome differs. A Congressional Research Service overview of SAR operations notes that the National Park Service has reported the majority of SAR incidents among agencies with available data from 2019 to 2023, and identifies units with consistently high call volumes, such as Grand Canyon, Lake Mead, and Yosemite. A high volume of rescues does not mean a high volume of disappearances, but it does establish the setting. Many visitors, many trips that go wrong, and a system built to respond quickly when something is reported late or uncertain. Records from individual parks show how common it is for ordinary trips to become formal incidents. For 2024, Yosemite National Park logged 191 search and rescue responses, with many involving dehydration, falls, exhaustion, or people becoming lost. The same report notes that dozens of those incidents required air support. The underlying situations vary, but the initiating moment is often the same. Someone did not return when expected, and location became unclear. In a disappearance, that loss of location becomes the central fact. The last known point is rarely a fixed coordinate. It is usually an estimate built from a witness statement, a sign-in sheet, a receipt time, a photo timestamp, or a remembered conversation at a trail junction. The difference between near the junction and past the junction can mean multiple drainages, separate search teams, and days added to the timeline. Dense forest and broken terrain make a short distance feel like a different place. Weather folds over the area and erases faint evidence. On the 22nd of July, 2013, Geraldine Jerry Largay, a 6-year-old hiker, left the Appalachian Trail in Maine and became disoriented. She was attempting a long-distance hike and stepped off the trail, later failing to relocate it. Search efforts involved multiple agencies and continued without locating her. Her remains were found in October 2015 by a surveyor, forester, working in the area, in woods close to the route but concealed by vegetation. The reporting around the case emphasized that she survived for a period after she was lost, and that she had attempted to reach help without reliable service. The documented details of that case are plain, but they show a recurring administrative problem in wilderness settings. A person can be near a known corridor and still remain unseen for a long time. Proximity does not guarantee detection. Vegetation, uneven ground, and the angle of site work against a search line. Sound does not carry evenly. A tent can be present and still disappear into the background from a few dozen yards away. The formal map view and the field view do not match. Some cases begin without a single, clear, last known point and are later reinterpreted as wilderness disappearances because the eventual evidence concentrates in remote terrain. On the 24th of February, 1978, 5 men from Yuba County, California, attended a basketball game in Chico and then failed to return home. Their vehicle was later found on a high mountain road in Plumas National Forest, away from their expected route. After the snow season changed, 4 bodies were found months later, including one inside a Forest Service trailer. One man, Gary Mathias, was never located. The available accounts describe evidence that they were in the car for a period after last being seen, and that they moved through difficult winter conditions. Even without explaining why they were there, the case shows the same structural shift seen in other records. Ordinary travel becomes a search grid once the route is no longer known. The scene moves from highways and towns to secondary roads, then to terrain where there are few landmarks that matter to a person on foot. The people who search are forced to reconstruct choices they did not witness. Each new discovery changes the earlier assumptions, but the initial hours are spent operating on partial information. A wilderness disappearance also changes the kinds of statements that enter the file. Many reports include short quotations because they mark responsibility and timing. A ranger describes the first sweep. A coordinator notes weather or visibility. In the Dennis Martin case, the recorded timeline includes the moment he was last seen at roughly 4:30 p.m., a Ranger 7, and later descriptions of the search mention the scale of the response and the conditions that interfered with tracking. In the Largay case, later reporting preserved the practical fact that she was found near the trail, yet had been hidden by terrain and growth. Across decades, the repeated elements are measurable. A person separates from a group briefly. A route is altered by a small decision. A vehicle remains where it should not be. A known corridor becomes a wide uncertainty. Official response expands in stages, and each stage produces a different type of record. Early notes are about who is missing and where they were supposed to be. Later notes become about which areas were searched and what evidence was handled. If a search lasts, the language turns into maintenance, continued operations, reduced operations, suspended operations. Not every incident ends as a disappearance, and many end as rescues that never enter public attention. The same reporting structures still apply, and the same constraints appear in the background. Staff limits, weather windows, daylight hours, and the need to decide where to look next. When a person is not located quickly, the paper trail grows faster than the evidence on the ground. The file becomes thick with times, names, and checked places, while the central fact remains unchanged. A person went into a managed wilderness space and did not come back out on schedule. Signals without direction. When a disappearance occurs in a U.S. wilderness area, investigators now routinely collect electronic information alongside physical evidence. These records appear in case files as phone logs, satellite data, camera timestamps, and device histories. They are preserved in the same manner as witness statements and ranger observations. Although they provide measurable reference points, they rarely establish a complete path of movement. Before widespread mobile phone use, search records relied almost entirely on physical signs and human observation. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Park Service reports began to include references to cellular contact and battery status. They typically stated whether a phone had connected to a network, and when the connection ended, they were not treated as definitive location markers. One of the earliest widely documented cases involving mobile phone data is that of Geraldine "Jerry" Largay, who became lost on the Appalachian Trail in Maine in July 2013. Largay had a cell phone and attempted to contact emergency services and family members after leaving the trail. Phone records later showed multiple attempted calls and text messages that were never delivered due to lack of reception. Investigators documented these attempts as time markers. Her remains were found in October 2015, less than 2 miles from the trail, in dense forest that limited visibility. In the Largay case, search reports show that electronic information did not provide usable coordinates. The phone activity confirmed that she remained alive for a period after becoming lost. It did not establish where she traveled during that time. The absence of reliable signal coverage in the area made triangulation impossible. Her campsite remained undetected for more than 2 years. Mobile signal limitations appear frequently in national park incident reports. Many wilderness areas contain deep valleys, granite walls, and thick vegetation that block transmission. As a result, a phone may briefly connect to a distant tower and then lose service. This produces what reports describe as single ping or intermittent contact. Such entries indicate that communication occurred but lacks spatial precision. In Joshua Tree National Park, the disappearance of Bill Owasco in June 2010 illustrates this pattern. Owasco, a retired engineer, went hiking alone and did not return. Searchers later located some of his belongings, including a backpack and water bottles, but no electronic device data provided a clear location. Although his phone was found, it did not yield usable tracking information. His remains were discovered in 2018 inches rugged terrain far from primary search zones. Joshua Tree search documentation shows that limited electronic data required investigators to rely almost entirely on terrain analysis and field searching. The absence of reliable signal coverage in much of the park meant that mobile devices offered little assistance. Iwasko's case is frequently cited in SAR training materials as an example of technological limitations in desert environment. Global positioning system devices and satellite trackers have added another category of data. Some hikers carry GPS units or watches that record movement. When these devices function continuously, they can produce detailed routes. When they stop unexpectedly, they leave a single, final coordinate. Reports refer to this as the last recorded point. In the case of Randy Morganson, a veteran backcountry ranger who disappeared in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks in July 1996, no personal GPS data existed. However, later searches incorporated mapping and aerial survey technology to re-examine possible routes. His remains were found in 2009 near a trail he regularly patrolled. Although Morganson's case predates modern tracking devices, later investigators used updated mapping tools to reinterpret earlier search areas. More recent cases often combine GPS data with phone records. In 2018, hiker Paul Bear Miller went missing in Zion National Park. Searchers recovered some electronic equipment, but incomplete data limited its usefulness. Reports indicate that investigators examined battery life, device shutdown times, and possible malfunction scenarios. These analyses were documented but did not resolve his movements. Satellite communication devices, such as personal locator beacons and satellite messengers, are designed to transmit distress signals from remote locations. Many successful rescues begin with their activation. In disappearance cases, however, these devices are often not used, damaged, or lost. Their absence is noted as a factual element in reports. Denali National Park records include multiple incidents involving climbers whose satellite devices stopped transmitting without emergency activation. In some cases, weather damage was suspected. In others, no cause was identified. The final transmission coordinates were entered into case files and treated as approximate reference locations. Camera footage has become another routine source of information. Park authorities regularly review entrance cameras, shuttle bus recordings, visitor center surveillance, and nearby facility systems. This process is documented in investigation logs, including the time ranges examined and cameras checked. Visitor photographs and recreational videos are also examined. Search coordinators request material from social media platforms and personal devices. When such content is located, it is archived and time-stamped. These records often show campsites, viewpoints, or trail segments, but do not document direction of travel after filming. In several Appalachian Trail disappearances, including that of Largay, investigators preserved personal photos and messages as verified activity points. These materials established approximate locations at certain times. They did not clarify what happened afterward. Electronic data can also introduce uncertainty. Delayed uploads, incorrect device clocks, and signal reflection can distort timelines. Search manuals produced by the National Association for Search and Rescue emphasize that digital records should be interpreted conservatively. This guidance appears in operational assessments and training documents. In some long-term cases, archived electronic data is re-examined years later using improved mapping software. Phone records and satellite logs are digitally reconstructed. These reviews sometimes narrow potential search areas. They rarely resolve cases completely. The Dennis Martin disappearance in 1969 occurred decades before modern tracking technology. However, later researchers analyzed radio logs, helicopter flight records, and early communication transcripts to estimate search coverage. Contemporary cases undergo similar reviews using digital sources. The method differs, but the purpose remains reconstruction rather than explanation. National Park Service internal evaluations from the late 2010s note that electronic information has improved response speed in rescue situations, but has had limited effect on unresolved disappearances. These findings appear in operational summaries and training updates. Despite technological expansion, physical searching remains central. Ranger reports consistently describe teams moving through drainages, ridgelines, and forested slopes, regardless of electronic indicators. Signal data may guide initial deployment. It does not replace ground coverage. Over time, electronic traces become part of permanent archives. They are stored alongside handwritten notes, witness interviews, and radio transcripts. Future investigators encounter them as fixed entries, a timestamp, a disconnected call, a final coordinate. Their meaning depends on surrounding context. In wilderness disappearance files, these digital elements function as markers rather than solutions. They confirm moments of contact without defining routes. They document presence without explaining absence. They enlarge the factual record while leaving its central uncertainty unchanged. Ground that changes under searchers' feet. Search operations in wilderness areas rely on the assumption that physical traces remain visible long enough to be interpreted. Footprints, disturbed soil, broken vegetation, displaced stones, and compacted sand function as temporary records of movement. These records exist only under specific environmental conditions. Weather, wildlife activity, plant growth, erosion, and seasonal cycles alter them continuously. Search documentation consistently notes that surface conditions change more quickly than investigative timelines. Terrain shapes how long physical evidence survives. In arid regions, wind redistributes sand and gravel. In forested landscapes, organic debris accumulates on the ground. In mountainous areas, snowpack and runoff repeatedly reshape surfaces. Wetlands and riparian zones compress and refill. Because of these variations, search reports routinely include detailed descriptions of soil texture, moisture levels, recent storms, and vegetation density. In Death Valley National Park, environmental instability has played a central role in several long-term missing person cases. In July 1996, a German family, Anita and Max Strube, and their sons Georgie and Dorothea, became lost while traveling through the park in a rented vehicle. Search efforts located the abandoned car, but early attempts to follow tracks were limited by heat, wind, and rocky terrain. Over time, shifting sand and erosion altered surrounding areas. When remains and personal items were discovered years later in remote sections of the park, investigators documented how seasonal flooding and sediment movement had changed drainage patterns since the original search. Death Valley search records emphasize the effects of extreme temperatures on physical evidence. High heat accelerates evaporation and dries organic material. Windstorms regularly erase footprints and redistribute surface layers. Washes and canyons are reshaped during seasonal storms. These processes reduce the longevity of visible sign and complicate later reconstruction. Desert environments also limit vegetation-based indicators. Sparse plant cover means fewer bent stems or broken branches. In many areas, hard rock surfaces dominate. Searchers often rely on minor gravel displacement or tire impressions, which are easily erased. Incident reports from the National Park Service describe these regions as low retention surfaces, indicating minimal capacity to preserve human movement. Mountain regions present different challenges. Snow accumulation covers ground features. Wind sculpts, drifts, freeze, thaw cycles, fracture soil, and loosen rock. During spring melt, runoff channels carry debris downslope. On Mount Hood in Oregon, the disappearance of climber Kelly James in January 2006 illustrates these effects. James was separated from his climbing partner during winter conditions. Search teams operated in heavy snowfall, high winds, and avalanche-prone terrain. Early reports documented that fresh snow buried potential tracks within hours. Subsequent storms and melting cycles eliminated surface evidence. James's body was recovered later in the year, after snow retreat exposed previously inaccessible areas. Investigators noted that environmental conditions had prevented early visual detection. Snow-related disruption appears frequently in alpine case files. Winter searches rely on short windows of stability. Tracks may be followed briefly before being covered. Ice formation alters rock faces and ledges. Spring melt redistributes material downslope. Reports from parks such as Mount Rainier and Rocky Mountain consistently reference these constraints. Vegetation growth alters evidence in temperate and mountainous forests. During spring and summer, shrubs, grasses, and saplings expand rapidly. Leaf litter accumulates in autumn. These processes conceal depressions, footprints, and campsites. Objects left on the ground become visually integrated into surrounding cover. Yosemite incident reports frequently reference granite slabs, talus fields, and steep drainages. On bare rock, footprints do not form. On talus, stones shift underfoot and quickly settle. In forested pockets, leaf litter and undergrowth conceal disturbance. These mixed conditions require searchers to adjust methods constantly. Autumn leaf fall introduces another layer of change. Deciduous forests develop uniform surfaces that mask irregularities. When leaves become wet, they compress and slide, distorting impression. Winter snow then seals these layers. During spring thaw, saturated leaf mats break apart. Tracking specialists classify these environments as unstable sign zones. Wildlife further alters surfaces. Large mammals compress soil and overlap human tracks. Smaller animals disturb leaf litter and scatter items. Birds and rodents may relocate lightweight objects. Search documentation from multiple parks includes references to animal interference, particularly in long-duration cases. Water movement removes and redistributes evidence. Streams, rivers, and seasonal runoff reshape banks and transport debris. After storms, narrow creeks become temporary channels that carve new paths. Sediment deposits change rapidly. Personal belongings may be carried far from their original locations. Death Valley and Yosemite reports both contain examples of flash flooding, altering search zones. In several cases, washes that were dry during initial searches later became active channels. Investigators documented that early surface features were no longer present after seasonal storms. Fire changes landscapes on a broader scale. Wildfires remove vegetation, expose soil, and destabilize slopes. Burned areas initially increase visibility, followed by rapid regrowth. Post-fire surveys sometimes reveal previously hidden objects. After major fires in California parks, search teams have revisited older missing person areas. Reports describe how vegetation loss exposed rock faces and ground surfaces that had been concealed. In some instances, personal items were located only after fire altered the environment. Human activity during searches also modifies terrain. Large operations involve coordinated movement through limited areas. Foot traffic compresses soil. Ropes, anchors, and equipment disturb vegetation. Excavation alters surfaces. Many after-action reports acknowledge that intensive searching reduces the reliability of later tracking. Search coordinators document these effects in operational summaries. Controlled movement protocols and limited access zones are used to reduce disturbance. Despite these measures, high-volume searches inevitably alter the environment. Seasonal cycles influence all of these processes. Winter compresses and conceals surfaces. Spring introduces runoff and mud. Summer promotes growth and dust. Autumn layers debris. Search planning documents routinely include seasonal assessments to estimate how quickly evidence will decay under local conditions. National Park Service training materials refer to environmental persistence when evaluating physical traces. This term describes how long evidence is likely to remain visible. Persistence varies by region and season. It influences decisions about search timing, resource allocation, and redeployment. Wetlands and riparian corridors present additional challenges. Saturated soil fills footprints rapidly. Organic matter decomposes quickly. Vegetation density restricts visibility. Reports from coastal reserves and southern parks describe minimal tracking potential in these environments. In long-term disappearances, recovery sometimes occurs only after significant environmental change. Drought exposes riverbeds. Landslides reveal buried material. Fire clears vegetation. Glacier retreat uncovers previously covered ground. Investigators document these discoveries alongside explanations of landscape evolution. Across decades of records, environmental transformation remains a constant feature. Searchers operate in landscapes that do not remain stable. Storms, seasons, and years reshape surfaces. Reports reflect this reality through repeated references to erosion, growth, disturbance, and weather. These physical processes do not explain why people disappear. They determine what information remains accessible afterward. As time passes, original surface conditions fade. What persists is a layered archive of altered ground, mapped routes, and recorded observations. Delays before anyone notices. Official records show that many cases are not reported immediately. Hours, days, and sometimes longer periods pass before authorities are contacted. These delays become permanent features of case files. They affect what evidence remains available and how much information can be recovered. Most reporting delays begin with informal expectations. Visitors frequently plan flexible schedules. Return times are approximate. Check-in arrangements are casual. A hiker may say they will be back by evening or in a few days. When that time passes, companions or family members often assume ordinary disruption. Weather, transportation problems, extended routes, or schedule changes are considered. This waiting period is documented repeatedly in incident summaries. Park Service records show that many overdue reports begin with uncertainty rather than alarm. Dispatch logs include phrases such as "subject may be delayed," "possibly extended trip," or "awaiting confirmation." These entries indicate that absence is recognized but not yet classified as a missing person situation. Formal response is often postponed until additional confirmation is obtained. Backcountry permit systems are intended to reduce uncertainty. Visitors who register routes and return dates provide reference points. However, compliance is inconsistent. Many hikers do not file permits. Others submit incomplete plans. Some change routes without notifying staff. Ranger reports from multiple national parks show that a large percentage of overdue cases involve visitors without verified itineraries. Checkout procedures are also uneven. In some parks, visitors are asked to report when trips end. In practice, many do not. Rangers typically do not follow up immediately. Logs indicate that several days may pass before missing status is considered, especially during peak seasons when staff are managing heavy visitor volumes. Vehicle monitoring plays a role in delayed recognition. Parking lots and trailhead areas are checked periodically. Rangers note license plates and place notices on unattended cars. Only after multiple days of inactivity is a welfare check initiated. This protocol appears in standard operating procedures across federal and state parks. It creates a built-in reporting delay. Campground hosts and maintenance staff sometimes provide the first formal alerts. Unattended tents, unused campsites, or abandoned food storage containers are reported during routine rounds. These observations are entered into daily logs. In many cases, they occur several days after the person stopped occupying the site. Solo travelers are especially affected by delayed reporting. Without companions, no immediate witness notices absence. Family members may not know exact routes. Communication plans may be vague. Park Service analyses from the 2010s indicate that solo hikers account for a significant proportion of late reported incidents. Long-distance trail users present similar challenges. Multi-week hikers often alter pace and direction. Support contacts expect irregular communication. Hostels, shuttle drivers, and trail angels sometimes become the first parties to notice irregular patterns. Their reports may occur days after last confirmed activity. Communication limitations contribute further. Many wilderness areas lack reliable cellular coverage. Visitors often plan to reconnect only after returning to towns. When delays occur, no warning is transmitted. Search coordinators document these gaps as communication blackout periods. These periods appear frequently in case timelines. Cultural and personal factors influence reporting behavior. Some families hesitate to contact authorities immediately, fearing unnecessary response. Others attempt independent searches first. Sheriff Department records and park correspondence include references to relatives conducting informal inquiries before requesting official assistance. These actions are documented without judgment. International visitors add complexity. Language barriers, unfamiliarity with emergency systems, and overseas communication delays can slow notification. Park files include multiple examples of embassies and consulates becoming involved only after extended periods. Administrative correspondence records these delays in detail. Law enforcement classification systems also affect timing. Guidelines distinguish between overdue, welfare concern, and missing person. Each category triggers different procedures. Movement between categories requires verification and supervisory approval. Case files often show several days passing before full missing status is assigned. Early uncertainty is reflected in dispatch language. Terms such as unconfirmed absence, status unknown, and pending verification appear repeatedly. These phrases indicate procedural caution. They also mark periods when active searching is limited or absent. National Association for Search and Rescue training materials emphasize the importance of early notification. Studies cited in these manuals show that evidence preservation declines rapidly with time. Despite this guidance, operational reviews acknowledge that delays remain common due to practical realities. Technology has shortened some reporting intervals. Text messaging, social media, and location sharing applications allow faster confirmation of absence. Satellite messengers can transmit emergency signals. Park Service evaluations note improved response times in cases involving active tracking devices. However, many visitors still travel without such tools. Device failure also contributes to delay. Phones lose power, GPS units malfunction, satellite subscriptions expire. When communication equipment fails, absence may go unnoticed. Reports frequently list equipment status as inactive, offline, or battery depleted. Delayed reporting complicates later reconstruction. By the time authorities are notified, environmental conditions have changed. Weather has altered surfaces. Wildlife has disturbed objects. human traffic has increased. Search planners must rely more heavily on indirect data, such as receipts, photographs, and witness recollections. Investigators attempt to compensate through timeline reconstruction. They review transaction records, transportation logs, permit databases, and digital metadata. These materials establish approximate activity periods. They cannot replace direct observation from early hours. In some cases, delayed reporting leads to fragmented jurisdiction. A disappearance may cross county or park boundaries before authorities are aware. Early coordination opportunities are missed. Memoranda of understanding are invoked later to realign responsibility. These administrative adjustments consume time. Internal reviews conducted by the National Park Service during the late 2010s identify delayed recognition as a recurring structural issue. These reviews do not assign blame. They describe it as a predictable outcome of flexible travel patterns and limited oversight. As cases progress, early delays become fixed reference points. Investigators measure subsequent actions against the initial gap. Maps, interviews, and evidence logs are organized around this interval. The missing time remains central to case analysis. Across decades of wilderness investigations, delayed reporting appears consistently. It arises from informal planning, limited communication, administrative caution, and logistical uncertainty. Case files preserve these circumstances through timestamps and procedural notes. These intervals do not explain why individuals fail to return. They define when formal attention begins. By the time systems activate, the informational environment has already shifted. The record reflects this transition through its earliest entries, objects that appear long after. In many wilderness investigations, physical evidence is not recovered during the initial response period. Instead, it appears later during unrelated activities, such as trail maintenance, wildlife surveys, geological mapping, hunting seasons, or recreational travel. These discoveries are usually accidental. They are not the result of renewed searches. When reported, they initiate a secondary documentation process that reconnects dormant records with newly located material. Delayed findings are treated as new scenes. Rangers and law enforcement officers establish boundaries, record geographic coordinates, and photograph the surrounding area. Environmental conditions are documented, including slope angle, vegetation density, soil type, and recent weather. These observations are entered into supplemental reports and linked to existing case files. The original investigation timeline is updated to reflect the discovery date. Recovery locations are often close to earlier search zones when measured on maps. In practical terms, they may be separated by steep elevation changes, dense vegetation, narrow drainages, or unstable surfaces. Case reviews consistently note that visual access, rather than distance, limited earlier detection. Objects remained concealed because lines of sight were obstructed or access routes were impractical. Seasonal accessibility strongly influences delayed recovery. Snowpack, flooding, heat restrictions, and wildfire closures prevent sustained presence in some areas. When these barriers change, new terrain becomes reachable. Search archives contain numerous references to previously inaccessible areas, becoming available after weather shifts. Discoveries frequently follow these transitions. Environmental concealment operates through multiple processes. Vegetation grows over fabric and equipment. Leaf litter accumulates. Wind deposits sand and dust. Rockfall covers small items. Water transports objects downstream. Over time, manufactured materials acquire natural coverings. Search reports describe how backpacks, shoes, and clothing often resemble surrounding debris after prolonged exposure. Sunlight and temperature alter material appearance. Plastics fade, metals corrode, fabrics bleach and fray. These changes reduce contrast with natural surfaces. Recovery documentation routinely includes notes on discoloration, brittleness, and surface degradation. These observations are used to estimate exposure duration. Delayed discoveries are not limited to open ground. Many occur in concealed spaces, such as crevices, dense brush pockets, under fallen trees, or behind rock formations. Searchers reviewing past coverage often find that these microenvironments were difficult to inspect systematically. Documentation emphasizes that complete visual coverage is rarely achievable in complex terrain. Water systems play a significant role in redistributing evidence. Streams, rivers, and seasonal runoff channels carry objects, deposit them in sediment, and bury them under debris. During periods of low flow, submerged material becomes visible. Recovery reports from multiple parks describe items emerging during droughts or late summer conditions. Human activity contributes to delayed detection. Trails shift, campsites expand or contract, informal paths develop, maintenance crews modify terrain. These changes expose buried objects or open new lines of sight. Construction and erosion control projects are frequent sources of late discoveries. When material is located, investigators assess its evidentiary value. Identification tags, serial numbers, handwritten notes, electronic storage devices, and distinctive markings are examined. If present, these features are photographed and logged. Items lacking identifiers are catalogued and compared with missing persons records. Laboratory analysis is conducted when appropriate. Clothing is examined for wear patterns and environmental damage. Bones are evaluated for exposure effects. Electronic devices are tested for recoverable data. Forensic reports are added to case files and referenced in administrative summaries. DNA testing has become central to delayed identification. Samples are processed through accredited laboratories and compared with reference databases. Testing timelines are documented. Results are incorporated into national and state records. These procedures may take months or years. Administrative updates follow verification. Missing persons registries are revised. Case statuses are changed. Interagency notifications are issued. Legal documentation, including death certifications when warranted, is completed. Correspondence between agencies records these steps. Public communication typically occurs after confirmation. Press releases summarize discovery conditions and verification methods. They avoid interpretive language. Media coverage varies depending on elapsed time and public interest. Not all discoveries lead to identification. Some items cannot be conclusively linked to any individual. Environmental degradation, incomplete records, and limited comparative data prevent resolution. These objects are stored in evidence facilities or returned to appropriate authorities. Training materials emphasize that delayed recovery sites must be handled as primary scenes. Evidence protocols apply regardless of age. Investigators are instructed to document context thoroughly, even when material appears minimal. Search and rescue reviews note that many unresolved cases include partial recoveries. A single shoe, container, or garment may be located without further trace. These fragments are mapped and archived. They rarely generate new investigative directions. Delayed discoveries expand case files without reconstructing full events. They provide fixed reference points within long, fragmented timelines. Investigators treat them as factual anchors rather than explanatory elements. Across decades of wilderness records, late emerging objects follow consistent patterns. They appear during routine activity. They reflect environmental concealment. They require structured verification. They enter archives through standardized procedures. How maps are redrawn over time. Search operations in wilderness areas rely on maps that evolve throughout an investigation. These maps begin as simple outlines based on trail systems, parking areas, permit routes, and reported plans. Over time, they become layered records that reflect decisions, assumptions, corrections, and new information. Each revision is documented and preserved as part of the case file. Initial maps are built from limited inputs. Dispatchers and planners combine last known locations, intended routes, and known hazards. Topographic data, satellite imagery, and park trail databases are used to establish baseline coverage areas. These early maps are often broad. They reflect uncertainty rather than precision. Search coordinators refer to them as preliminary operational maps. As field teams deploy, coverage boundaries are adjusted. Areas that have been walked, flown over, or visually scanned are marked as cleared. The level of coverage is recorded using standardized terms such as high probability, limited visibility, or negative search. These designations appear on printed maps and in digital systems. They indicate where searches have been and under what conditions. National Park Service and county sheriff manuals describe probability-based mapping methods. These methods assign numerical values to different zones based on estimated likelihood and detection capability. Planners combine terrain difficulty, vegetation density, and human behavior models. The result is a grid system that prioritizes certain areas. These grids are updated as information changes. Search maps are rarely static. Every new data point alters their structure. A witness statement, camera record, equipment discovery, or environmental shift may prompt reclassification. Planning notes often describe these changes using phrases such as area expanded, focus shifted, or boundary adjusted. Each modification is dated and justified. Digital mapping systems have increased the precision of these revisions. Modern operations use geographic information systems to layer routes, search tracks, and observation points. GPS devices carried by searchers automatically record movement. These tracks are uploaded and overlaid on master maps. Supervisors review them to identify gaps and redundancies. Despite improved technology, interpretation remains central. A recorded path does not indicate what was visible along that path. Planners must estimate sightlines, obstructions, and lighting conditions. Many reports include annotations about shadows, glare, or vegetation density. These factors influence whether an area is considered thoroughly searched. Early maps often reflect assumptions about behavior. Planners may estimate how far a person could travel within a certain time based on age, fitness, and terrain. These estimates create radius-based zones. As time passes without results, these zones are expanded. Search files show repeated outward movement of boundaries over days and weeks. This expansion is not uniform. Certain directions may be emphasized based on slope, drainage patterns, or trail networks. Downhill routes, water sources, and established paths often receive higher priority. Mapping documents illustrate how these features shape coverage patterns. Areas without natural travel corridors may receive less early attention. Revisions also occur when original assumptions are questioned. If later information contradicts initial timelines or routes, planners may reclassify previously low-priority areas. These changes are recorded in planning memoranda. The earlier maps are retained for reference. New versions are numbered or timestamped. A common feature of long-term case files is the accumulation of multiple map sets. Early hand-drawn sketches coexist with later digital models. Each reflects the knowledge available at the time. Investigators reviewing old cases often compare these layers to understand how priorities shifted. Environmental change influences remapping. Snowmelt, flooding, landslides, fire, and vegetation growth modify access routes and visibility. When conditions change, planners revise coverage areas. Regions previously inaccessible may be added. Previously searched zones may require re-evaluation. These updates are documented in operational summaries. Mapping revisions also respond to resource availability. When staffing levels decline, planners may reduce active zones. When new teams arrive, coverage expands. Budget reports and personnel rosters are often cross-referenced with map updates. This linkage shows how logistics affect spatial planning. Interagency coordination requires map standardization. Federal, state, and volunteer groups must share compatible formats. Incident command guidelines specify symbol systems and labeling conventions. These standards allow different teams to interpret maps consistently. Compliance is monitored through planning audits. Communication records show that mapping disagreements sometimes arise. Different agencies may interpret terrain or probability differently. Resolution occurs through planning meetings and field verification. Notes from these meetings are preserved in case archives. They document how consensus was reached. Historical case reviews reveal that some areas are searched multiple times under different classifications. An area marked cleared during early operations may later be re-examined under new criteria. Reports explain these decisions by referencing changes in visibility, equipment, or assumptions. The reclassification is treated as procedural rather than corrective. Search maps also incorporate negative findings. Locations where nothing was found are marked and dated. These negative data points influence future planning. They reduce estimated probability in certain zones and redirect effort elsewhere. Planning manuals emphasize the importance of documenting absence as well as presence. As cases extend over months or years, maps become archival tools. Active searching declines, but spatial records remain. Periodic reviews use these maps to evaluate whether significant gaps exist. In some instances, dormant areas are reactivated for targeted searches. These decisions are based on historical coverage patterns. Technological advances have altered long-term mapping practices. High-resolution satellite imagery, LiDAR surveys, and drone mapping provide new perspectives. Investigators sometimes overlay older search grids onto updated terrain models. This process reveals areas that were previously misinterpreted or underestimated. Administrative correspondence shows that remapping often accompanies external review. When independent analysts or oversight bodies examine cases, they frequently request full map histories. These records are used to assess whether coverage was consistent with policy. Responses include annotated reproductions and explanatory memoranda. Public information requests have also influenced map preservation. Many agencies maintain searchable archives of operational maps. These archives contain metadata describing creation dates, authorship, and revision history. Access policies are outlined in records management guidelines. Mapping practices are standardized through training. Search coordinators receive instruction in spatial analysis, probability modeling, and documentation. Training manuals emphasize clarity, transparency, and reproducibility. These principles appear repeatedly in internal evaluations. Despite standardization, uncertainty remains inherent. Maps represent interpretations rather than complete reconstructions. They reflect where teams went and what they believed at the time. Later information may render some layers obsolete. Case files preserve these layers as part of the investigative record. In unresolved disappearances, the final map set often shows extensive coverage with diminishing returns. Large areas may be marked as searched under varying conditions. Smaller pockets may remain unclassified due to access limits. These patterns are visible in archived planning materials. Investigators reviewing older cases frequently note that mapping constraints reflected available tools and knowledge. Handheld GPS units, paper maps, and manual plotting dominated earlier decades. Modern systems allow greater precision but do not eliminate interpretive judgment. This continuity is evident in comparative analyses. Across decades of wilderness investigations, map revision follows consistent cycles. Initial broad zones narrow and expand. Assumptions are tested and revised. Environmental and logistical factors reshape boundaries. Each stage is recorded through layered cartographic records. These maps do not explain outcomes. They document process. They show how understanding developed and changed. Over time, they become historical artifacts of investigative effort rather than guides for future action. Records that remain open for decades. Case files are structured to allow long-term storage. Early documents include initial reports, dispatch logs, witness statements, and search maps. As time passes, additional materials are added. Laboratory results, interagency letters, budget summaries, and review memoranda. Files grow incrementally. They are reorganized periodically to meet changing archival standards. Federal agencies follow retention schedules. The National Park Service and the Department of the Interior classify missing person investigations as permanent or long-term records. These classifications determine storage methods and access rules. Digital systems now supplement older paper repositories. Scanning projects have converted thousands of historical files into searchable formats. County sheriff offices maintain parallel records. State law often requires indefinite retention of unresolved missing person cases. These records are stored in evidence rooms, off-site facilities, or centralized digital platforms. Inventory lists document box numbers, shelf locations, and data formats. Movement of files is logged. Periodic review is a standard practice. Many agencies conduct annual or multi-year evaluations of open cases. Review committees examine timelines, evidence lists, and search coverage. Notes from these meetings are added to files. Recommendations may include limited follow-up searches, record updates, or database cross-checks. Some reviews are triggered externally. New forensic technologies, unidentified remains discoveries, or database upgrades prompt re-examination. When DNA indexing systems expanded in the 2000s and 2010s, many older cases were revisited. Investigators checked whether biological samples were available for testing. Correspondence related to these reviews is preserved. Record maintenance also includes updating personal information. Addresses of family members, emergency contacts, and legal representatives may change. Agencies periodically verify contact details. These updates are entered into case management systems and dated. Freedom of Information Act requests influence archival practices. Members of the public, journalists, and researchers sometimes request access to long-term files. Agencies respond by reviewing records for releasable content. Redacted copies are produced. Logs document what was disclosed and when. Digital migration has reshaped record storage. Older databases are periodically replaced. Data is transferred to new platforms. Migration reports describe compatibility issues, data loss risks, and verification procedures. These technical documents become part of administrative archives. Evidence associated with open cases is managed separately. Physical items are stored in controlled facilities. Inventory audits verify condition and labeling. Chain of custody records are maintained even when no active investigation is underway. Evidence retention policies require periodic inspection. Financial documentation remains attached to long-term files. Search costs, reimbursement requests, and grant reports are preserved. These records allow agencies to account for expenditures years later. Budget archives are cross-referenced with operational files. Interagency communication continues after active searching ends. Federal, state, and local authorities exchange updates when new information emerges. A laboratory notification, a database match, or a public tip generates correspondence. Each message is logged. Public tip management is another long-term function. Many agencies maintain hotlines or online reporting systems. Tips are entered into databases and assigned reference numbers. Even after years, new submissions are reviewed and linked to existing files. Disposition notes explain whether leads were pursued. Training programs incorporate archived cases. Search coordinators and investigators study older files as instructional material. Redacted case packets are used in courses. These packets include timelines, maps, and administrative summaries. Their use is documented in training records. Case status terminology varies by jurisdiction. Some agencies use terms such as active, inactive, suspended, or administratively open. These categories reflect resource allocation rather than investigative certainty. Status changes require supervisory approval and are recorded in writing. Families interact with archives over time. Requests for updates, copies of records, and clarification are documented. Agencies maintain correspondence logs. These logs record dates, topics, and responses. Policies emphasize consistency in communication. Technological developments periodically alter archival value. Advances in facial recognition, genealogical DNA, and database integration lead to renewed interest in older files. Agencies issue internal notices identifying eligible cases for review. These notices are filed. Some records are transferred to historical repositories. After several decades, certain case files are moved to state archives or federal record centers. Transfer forms list contents and restrictions. Access conditions are specified. These transfers ensure long-term preservation. Audit processes monitor compliance. Internal inspectors and external reviewers examine whether files are complete and properly stored. Audit reports identify deficiencies and corrective actions. These reports are attached to administrative records. Despite systematic maintenance, gaps remain. Older files may lack digital backups. Handwritten notes may be incomplete. Early audio recordings may degrade. Preservation challenges are acknowledged in archival assessment. Long-term files accumulate multiple layers of interpretation. Early assumptions, later revisions, and retrospective analyses coexist. Each layer is preserved. Investigators reviewing a case decades later encounter a complex documentary record. Administrative continuity is maintained through standardized forms and templates. Although formats change, core categories remain stable. Dates, locations, personnel, and actions are consistently recorded. This continuity allows cross-generational review. Open cases are periodically referenced in statistical reports. Agencies publish summaries of unresolved investigations. These reports aggregate data without individual detail. Underlying files support these summaries. Across decades, record maintenance reflects institutional responsibility. Files remain accessible. Evidence is preserved. Databases are updated. Reviews are conducted. These processes continue, regardless of investigative outcome. These records do not resolve disappearances. They preserve institutional memory. They document actions taken, decisions made, and information received. Over time, they become comprehensive administrative histories. In wilderness investigations, the enduring file often outlasts field activity. While terrain and evidence change, documentation remains. The archive becomes the primary location where the case continues to exist. Patterns seen only in aggregated data. Large-scale analysis of wilderness disappearance records begins after individual case files are converted into standardized entries. Names, dates, coordinates, activity types, and resolution statuses are extracted from reports and entered into centralized systems. This process transforms narrative documents into structured datasets. Once converted, cases can be compared across jurisdictions and time periods. Federal and state agencies maintain multiple databases containing information on missing persons and search and rescue incidents. The National Park Service, county sheriff departments, state clearinghouses, and federal repositories such as the National Crime Information Center collect overlapping records. Each system uses standardized categories, including date reported, location, age, activity type, and case status. These categories make cross-case comparison possible. In the early 2000s, several agencies began formal statistical reviews of wilderness-related incidents. These reviews were driven by increased visitation to public lands and rising operational costs. Analysts compiled data from incident management systems, SAR reports, and park annual summaries. The goal was to identify recurring operational demands rather than to explain individual outcomes. Aggregated reports from the National Park Service show that most SAR responses involve hikers, climbers, and day-use visitors. Annual summaries published by the agency categorize incidents by activity type, injury status, and rescue method. Although these reports focus on rescues rather than disappearances, they provide context for exposure patterns and operational environments. State-level missing persons clearinghouses also contribute to aggregated analysis. These offices compile reports from local agencies and classify cases by environment, duration, and resolution status. In Western states with large public land areas, clearinghouse summaries often include separate categories for wilderness or backcountry incident. Academic researchers and independent analysts have used these datasets to conduct statistical studies. Some studies examine demographic distribution, including age ranges, gender ratios, and travel experience levels. Others focus on temporal factors such as seasonality, time of day, and reporting delay. These analyses are published in peer-reviewed journals and technical reports. Seasonal variation appears consistently in aggregated data. Many agencies report higher volumes of wilderness incidents during summer months, corresponding with peak visitation. Secondary increases occur during spring and early autumn in temperate regions. Winter incidents are fewer, but often involve higher operational complexity. These patterns are documented in annual SAR summaries. Geographic clustering is another recurring feature. Aggregated maps show concentrations of incidents in high-traffic parks, popular climbing areas, and major trail corridors. Examples include Yosemite, Grand Canyon, Mount Rainier, Zion, and sections of the Appalachian and Pacific Crest Trails. These clusters reflect visitor density rather than anomaly. Distance from trail metrics are commonly analyzed. Some studies calculate how far missing individuals were found from established routes. Results vary by region and terrain. In forested and mountainous areas, many recoveries occur within a few miles of known corridors. In desert environments, distances tend to be larger. These findings are reported in SAR training literature. Age distribution has been examined through multi-year data sets. Aggregated reviews indicate that middle-aged and older adults represent a significant proportion of long-term wilderness disappearance cases. Younger visitors are more frequently involved in short-term rescues. These observations appear in state SAR statistics and federal incident summaries. Activity type is another variable used in comparative analysis. Long-distance hiking, solo backpacking, off-trail scrambling, and technical climbing are associated with higher proportions of unresolved cases. Day hiking and guided activities show higher recovery rates. These distinctions are documented in operational evaluations. Reporting delay is frequently quantified. Analysts compare time elapsed between last known activity and official report. Many datasets show that longer delays correlate with lower recovery probability. This relationship is presented in SAR training manuals and conference proceedings. The data supports early notification guidelines. Weather-related variables are also tracked. Incident records include temperature, precipitation, wind, and visibility. Aggregated analysis shows increased incident frequency during periods of extreme heat, sudden storms, and early season snow. These findings are used in public safety advisories and staffing planning. Technology use appears in newer datasets. Since the 2010s, reports increasingly note whether individuals carried GPS devices, satellite messengers, or mobile phones. Analysts compare outcomes between cases with active tracking and those without. Results indicate improved rescue speed in some categories, but limited impact on unresolved disappearances. These conclusions appear in internal evaluation. Search duration is another measurable factor. Large datasets show that most successful rescues occur within the first 72 hours. After this period, recovery rates decline. This pattern is documented in National Association for Search and Rescue publications and state-level reviews. It influences operational planning. Case resolution categories are standardized for analysis. Agencies classify outcomes as rescued, recovered, deceased, unresolved, or administratively closed. Aggregated statistics show that unresolved cases represent a small percentage of total SAR responses, but a significant share of long-term resource commitment. These figures appear in budget justification documents. Some analysts examine spatial overlap between unresolved cases. Using GIS software, they overlay multiple incidents to identify recurrent zones. These studies often find that overlap corresponds with terrain complexity, limited access, and low visibility. The results are presented in technical workshops and internal briefings. Data quality limitations are acknowledged in most aggregated reports. Older cases may lack precise coordinates. Early records may use inconsistent terminology. Some databases contain duplicate entries. Analysts document these issues in methodology sections. Correction procedures are described in appendices. Privacy regulations influence data aggregation. Personal identifiers are removed or anonymized before public release. Access to full datasets is restricted to authorized researchers and officials. Data sharing agreements specify permissible uses. These agreements are filed with administrative records. Public versions of aggregated reports are typically descriptive rather than interpretive. They present tables, charts, and trend summaries. Explanatory language is limited. Agencies emphasize that statistics reflect reporting practices as well as actual occurrence patterns. Aggregated data is used for staffing and budgeting decisions. Parks with consistently high incident volumes receive additional personnel and equipment. Seasonal staffing levels are adjusted based on historical trends. Funding proposals reference multi-year datasets. These documents are preserved in administrative archives. Training programs incorporate statistical findings. Search coordinators are taught common distribution patterns and risk indicators. Scenario exercises use anonymized data from past cases. Training manuals cite aggregated studies as supporting material. Media outlets sometimes reference aggregated statistics. Articles discussing wilderness safety often cite annual SAR totals or trend reports. Agencies respond by clarifying context and methodology. Press guidance documents address appropriate interpretation. Independent researchers periodically reanalyze public data sets. Their studies may focus on specific regions, activities, or demographic groups. Agencies review these publications and may incorporate findings into internal policy discussions. Correspondence related to such reviews is archived. Despite extensive analysis, aggregated data does not identify causal mechanisms. It describes frequencies and correlations. It does not reconstruct individual decision-making or environmental interactions. Official reports consistently emphasize this limitation. Long-term trend analysis shows gradual changes. Increased visitation has raised incident volume. Improved equipment has altered rescue methods. Communication technology has shifted reporting patterns. These developments are visible only through multi-decade comparison. Archived datasets also allow retrospective review. When new analytic tools emerge, older data may be reprocessed. Agencies document these efforts in technical memoranda. Results are added to historical records. Across federal and state systems, aggregation serves administrative and planning purposes. It supports resource allocation, training design, and public outreach. It does not resolve individual cases. It organizes institutional knowledge. In wilderness disappearance investigations, aggregated data functions as a secondary layer of documentation. Individual files provide detail. Combined records reveal distribution. Together, they form the quantitative background of investigative practice. These patterns remain statistical constructs. They summarize past reporting. They reflect institutional procedures. They change as data systems evolve. Their primary value lies in describing scale and frequency rather than outcome. How public attention shapes official records. Public visibility usually begins after information leaves internal agency systems and enters newspapers, broadcasts, and online platforms. Once this transition occurs, investigative files expand beyond operational material and begin to include communication records, public responses, and media coordination documents. These additions alter the structure and management of case archives. Initial records are typically limited to internal communication. Dispatch logs, ranger notes, and preliminary reports circulate within agencies. When a case is publicized, this internal system becomes connected to external audiences. Press inquiries, interview requests, and public statements are added to the administrative workload. These interactions are documented in communication logs. Public information officers play a central role in managing attention. National Park Service and Sheriff Department policies assign designated staff to coordinate media contact. Press releases, briefing notes, and talking points are prepared and stored. Each public statement is archived to preserve consistency and accountability. Media exposure often produces an increase in public tips, phone calls, emails, online submissions, and social media messages arrive in large numbers after coverage begins. Tip management systems assign reference numbers and record source details. Investigators review, classify, and disposition each submission. These actions are documented in case management platforms. Tip volume fluctuates with coverage intensity. Peaks commonly follow major news reports, anniversary stories, or televised features. Administrative summaries frequently include graphs showing surges in public contact. These patterns are used to plan staffing for information intake. Public tips vary in quality. Some provide specific observations, photographs, or location data. Others repeat rumors, speculation, or unrelated information. Review protocols require that all tips be logged, regardless of perceived value. Screening notes indicate whether follow-up occurred. Social media has expanded the scope of public involvement. Platforms such as Facebook, X, Instagram, and online forums host discussions about unresolved cases. Agencies monitor some of these spaces for relevant information. Screenshots and web links are sometimes preserved as evidence. Policies govern how such material may be used. Online activity also generates duplicate reporting. The same information may be submitted through multiple channels. Case files contain cross-references, linking related tips. Analysts work to identify repetition and consolidate records. This process is documented in internal memoranda. High-profile cases often produce volunteer search initiatives. Community groups organize independent efforts, sometimes coordinated with authorities. Sign-in sheets, route maps, and debrief notes from these activities are added to official files. When coordination is absent, agencies document public advisories and safety notices. Media narratives influence record content. Journalists frequently request timelines, maps, and photographs. Agencies respond with curated materials. Copies of released documents are stored alongside internal versions. Differences between public and internal records are noted. Public records laws shape disclosure practices. Agencies are required to respond to information requests under federal and state statutes. Response files include request letters, redaction justifications, and released documents. These records become part of the administrative history. Anniversary coverage is a recurring feature. On major date milestones, news organizations often revisit unresolved cases. Agencies prepare updated summaries and fact sheets. These materials are archived. Correspondence related to anniversary briefings appears regularly in long-term files. Families and advocacy groups also influence attention patterns. Organized campaigns, fundraising events, and online petitions generate additional documentation. Agencies log contacts and meetings related to these efforts. Policy guidance emphasizes neutral engagement and consistent messaging. Public attention affects resource allocation. Temporary staffing increases may be authorized to manage communication volume. Budget documents sometimes reference media-driven workload. These justifications are preserved in administrative archives. Internal reviews acknowledge that attention can alter investigative priorities. Increased visibility may prompt renewed record checks, additional database queries, or limited follow-up searches. Planning notes describe these actions as responsiveness measures. They are distinguished from routine review cycles. Press inaccuracies generate corrective documentation. When media reports contain errors, agencies issue clarifications. Drafts, approvals, and distribution records are kept. These materials demonstrate compliance with information standards. Public participation can also introduce evidentiary material. Photographs, videos, and personal logs submitted by citizens are evaluated and stored. Digital evidence management systems catalog these items. Metadata is preserved when possible. High-volume cases may require dedicated communication teams. Organizational charts in some files show temporary reassignment of personnel to handle media and public contact. These changes are recorded in staffing records. Training programs address public engagement. Investigators and supervisors receive instruction on media interaction, information control, and tip processing. Training materials cite past high-profile cases as examples. Attendance records are filed. Long-term attention produces cumulative documentation. Years of press releases, tip logs, and correspondence accumulate. These materials can exceed the volume of original investigative records. Archival inventories reflect this growth. Not all cases receive sustained attention. many remain largely unknown outside local communities. Comparative reviews show that high-visibility cases contain substantially larger communication files. This disparity is noted in internal assessments. Agencies maintain separation between public narrative and investigative assessment. Internal reports avoid referencing speculation circulating online. Policies emphasize reliance on verified information. Compliance is monitored through supervisory review. Digital archiving has increased preservation of media-related material. Web pages, video clips, and online articles are stored in electronic repositories. Metadata describes source and publication date. These archives support later review. Public attention also affects interagency coordination. National-level exposure may prompt involvement from federal partners. Memoranda documenting expanded coordination appear in case files following major coverage. Across decades of wilderness investigations, attention cycles follow recognizable patterns. Initial reporting produces spikes. Interest declines. Anniversaries renew coverage. Each phase generates documentation. These cycles are visible in archived communication logs. Public engagement does not determine investigative outcomes. It reshapes administrative processes. It increases record volume. It alters staffing patterns. It influences disclosure practices. These effects are reflected consistently in official files. Case records preserve these interactions through emails, press packets, tip databases, and meeting notes. Together, they form a parallel archive documenting how external attention intersected with internal procedure. Decisions made when searches end. Active field searching does not continue indefinitely. At some point, agencies shift from sustained operations to limited monitoring or suspension. This transition is governed by formal review processes. It is documented through planning memoranda, command briefings, and administrative approvals. These records explain how search activity changes over time. The decision process usually begins with internal evaluation meetings. Search coordinators, law enforcement supervisors, operations officers, and safety managers review current information. They examine coverage maps, personnel logs, weather forecasts, and probability assessments. Meeting notes summarize these discussions and become part of the case file. Search effectiveness is a central factor. Planners assess how much terrain has been examined and under what conditions. Areas searched under poor visibility or severe weather are classified differently from those covered in optimal conditions. Operational reports distinguish between high confidence and limited confidence zones. These distinctions influence continuation decisions. Time elapsed is another formal consideration. Incident command guidelines recognize that detection probability declines as time passes. Planning documents reference statistical models and past case comparisons. As days and weeks pass without findings, review summaries increasingly emphasize diminishing returns. Resource availability shapes every stage. Helicopter hours, fuel supplies, equipment maintenance, and personnel scheduling are evaluated regularly. Financial tracking reports show how costs accumulate. Command staff review these figures when determining whether large-scale deployment remains feasible. Personnel welfare is monitored through safety reports. Fatigue, injury rates, heat stress, and altitude effects are documented. Safety officers submit daily assessments. When risk levels rise, recommendations for reduced activity are recorded. These recommendations carry significant weight in final decisions. Weather projections influence suspension timing. Forecasts for storms, heat waves, heavy snowfall, or wildfire danger are reviewed. Operations logs show that extended hazardous conditions often trigger temporary halts. In some cases, temporary halts become long-term suspensions. Jurisdictional consultation is part of the process. County sheriffs, federal land managers, and state authorities confer before major changes. Memoranda of understanding outline approval requirements. Correspondence files preserve these exchanges. Formal status changes are issued in writing. Phrases such as transition to limited continuous search or suspension of active field operations appear in official notices. These notices specify effective dates and scope. They are distributed to participating agencies and archived. Limited continuous search programs replace full operations in many cases. Under these programs, routine patrols, maintenance crews, and rangers remain alert for evidence. Training materials instruct staff on how to report findings. Logs record these passive monitoring efforts. Public communication accompanies major transitions. Press statements explain that intensive searching has concluded. These releases emphasize continued review and monitoring. Copies are retained alongside internal justification documents. Families are formally notified. Agencies schedule meetings or send written notices. Communication logs document these interactions. Policies require that explanations reference operational factors rather than speculation. Evidence inventories are reviewed during transition. Command staff verify that collected items are catalogued and stored properly. Chain of custody records are updated. Any pending laboratory work is noted in summary reports. Search equipment is reassigned after suspension. Helicopters return to base operations. Specialized gear is inventoried and serviced. Logistics reports record these transfers. Budget files reflect cost reductions. Some cases undergo phased reduction rather than immediate suspension. Personnel numbers decrease gradually. Search zones are narrowed. Flight hours are reduced. These stages are documented in sequential planning updates. External reviews sometimes follow major suspensions. Oversight bodies or internal audit units examine decision records. Their reports assess compliance with policy. Findings are added to administrative archives. Technological reassessment may accompany closure decisions. Analysts review whether additional tools could reasonably improve detection. Reports document evaluations of drone use, imaging systems, or remote sensing. Negative conclusions are recorded. Legal considerations influence timing. Agencies must demonstrate that reasonable efforts were made. Case files include documentation prepared in anticipation of potential inquiries. These materials outline operational history and resource deployment. Volunteer participation declines as operations scale back. Rosters and attendance logs reflect this change. Coordinators document notification procedures and demobilization plans. Interagency agreements specify post-suspension responsibilities. Some partners withdraw completely, others retain limited involvement. These arrangements are formalized in correspondence. Long-term monitoring plans are sometimes established. These plans outline periodic reviews, database updates, and evidence checks. They assign responsibility to specific units. Approval signatures appear on final versions. In some instances, renewed information leads to reactivation. Reactivation protocols are stored with suspension records. They describe how personnel and equipment can be redeployed. These procedures are rarely used but formally maintained. Administrative databases are updated when active searching ends. Case status fields are changed. Timestamps are added. System logs record these modifications. Training programs reference past suspension decisions. Redacted case summaries are used to illustrate criteria. Evaluation forms document participant review of these materials. Across agencies, decision records show consistent structure. Evaluation meetings, risk assessments, cost reviews, and formal notices appear in nearly all long-term cases. These steps form a standardized pathway. These decisions do not represent conclusions about what occurred. They reflect operational capacity. Documentation emphasizes that suspension means reduced activity, not resolution. Case files preserve the entire transition process. Emails, reports, meeting notes, and financial summaries remain linked. Together, they show how field operations move from expansion to limitation. Over time, these records become reference points for future planning. New coordinators study them to understand past thresholds and constraints. The files serve as institutional memory. The end of active searching is a documented administrative event. It marks a change in method rather than an end to record keeping. The investigation continues in archival and monitoring systems. What remains after fieldwork ends? After active searching is reduced or suspended, wilderness disappearance investigations enter a long-term administrative phase. Field deployment gives way to record maintenance, periodic review, and institutional monitoring. Responsibility shifts from operations units to records managers, analysts, and supervisory staff. This transition is documented through formal status updates and internal memoranda. Case files remain active within law enforcement and park databases. Status fields are changed to reflect limited activity, but entries are not removed. Digital systems continue to generate reminders for scheduled reviews. Paper records are reorganized and stored in designated archival locations. Inventory logs record their placement. Evidence management becomes a primary responsibility. Physical items collected during earlier searches are inspected periodically. Storage conditions are evaluated. Labels and chain of custody forms are reviewed for accuracy. Any deterioration or damage is documented. Maintenance reports are added to the file. Biological material, when present, is preserved under controlled conditions. Laboratories retain reference samples according to retention schedules. Agencies receive confirmation of storage status. These confirmations are filed alongside original forensic reports. Database monitoring continues after fieldwork ends. Investigators regularly compare unresolved cases with unidentified remains records, DNA registries, and national missing persons systems. Automated matching programs generate alerts. Each alert is logged and evaluated, even when it produces no result. Interagency information exchange persists. Federal, state, and local authorities circulate periodic updates. These may include new technological capabilities, database expansions, or policy changes. Correspondence files record how these updates are integrated into existing cases. Family communication remains part of long-term management. Agencies maintain contact lists and correspondence histories. Requests for updates, documents, or clarification are logged. Response letters and meeting summaries are preserved. Policies emphasize consistent communication regardless of case age. Annual or multi-year reviews are conducted in many jurisdictions. Review teams examine timelines, evidence inventories, and past decisions. They assess whether new investigative options exist. Review findings are summarized in written reports and placed in the archive. Some reviews focus on technological developments. Analysts evaluate whether advances in DNA testing, image enhancement, mapping software, or database integration could be applied. These evaluations are recorded, even when no action follows. Training and professional development programs continue to draw on archived cases. Redacted files are used in classroom and field instruction. Instructors document case usage. Training records reference these materials as learning tools. Public records management remains ongoing. Agencies respond to information requests under applicable laws. Each request generates a response file containing correspondence, redactions, and released materials. These files become part of the administrative record. Digital preservation requires continuous attention. Older databases are migrated to new platforms. File formats are updated. Backup systems are maintained. Technical reports describe these processes and verify data integrity. Evidence reassessment may occur when new discoveries are made elsewhere. Unidentified remains, personal property, or DNA profiles may prompt renewed comparison. Analysts document these cross-checks. Results are entered into case management systems. Budget oversight continues in reduced form. Archived financial records are reviewed during audits. Agencies retain cost summaries and reimbursement documents. These records support accountability and historical analysis. Community inquiries and advocacy efforts generate additional documentation. Agencies log contacts related to memorials, awareness campaigns, and independent research projects. Policy guidance requires neutral response and record retention. Some cases are transferred to specialized cold case units. Transfer documents outline responsibilities, file contents, and access permissions. Copies are retained by both originating and receiving agencies. Archival standards govern long-term storage. Climate control, security protocols, and access restrictions are enforced. Inspection reports verify compliance. Deficiencies are corrected and documented. Over time, case files accumulate interpretive layers. Early assumptions, later revisions, and retrospective analyses coexist. Each layer is preserved. Supervisory notes explain how interpretations evolve. Periodic statistical reporting continues to include unresolved cases. Agencies update aggregated summaries. Underlying files support these reports. References to case numbers and statuses are maintained. Retirement and staff turnover affect file continuity. Handover procedures require outgoing personnel to brief successors. Transition checklists and briefing notes are stored. These materials preserve institutional memory. Legal status remains open unless formally closed. Prosecutorial reviews, when applicable, are documented. Legal correspondence is archived with investigative records. Some cases receive renewed attention after major discoveries or media events. Reactivation protocols guide response. Activation and deactivation records are preserved. Long-term storage facilities periodically transfer records to central archives. Transfer forms list contents and restrictions. Access conditions are specified. These transfers ensure preservation beyond agency operational lifespans. Despite reduced activity, Unresolved cases remain embedded in institutional systems. Databases generate reminders. Archives retain materials. Review cycles continue. These mechanisms sustain administrative presence. Documentation emphasizes continuity rather than resolution. Files are maintained so that future investigators can reconstruct past actions. Every update is linked to prior records. In wilderness disappearance investigations, the period after fieldwork ends is defined by maintenance and review. The focus shifts from terrain to documentation. The investigation persists through structured record keeping. What remains is an organized archive of actions, decisions, and materials. It reflects sustained responsibility rather than closure. The case continues to exist within institutional memory. How cases are finally closed. The administrative resolution of a wilderness disappearance investigation follows formal procedures that extend well beyond the end of field operations. Search activity may stop months or years earlier, but official records remain open until legal, forensic, and supervisory requirements are satisfied. Closure is treated as a regulated process rather than a final event. Each stage is documented through written approvals and system records. The process usually begins when agencies receive verified material that allows formal review. This may include forensic identification, authenticated personal property, court documentation, or certified medical findings. Investigators assemble these materials into a structured review file. This file contains chronological summaries, search records, laboratory reports, correspondence, and evidence inventories. Supervisory personnel examine the review file in detail. They verify that operational standards were followed and that reporting requirements are complete. Review memoranda identify unresolved elements, documentation gaps, and compliance issues. Requests for additional verification are recorded and tracked through approval channels. Forensic examination plays a central role in many administrative resolutions. When remains are recovered, specialists compare DNA profiles, dental records, implanted medical devices, and physical characteristics with reference data. Laboratory reports are reviewed and certified. Copies are placed in investigative, medical, and archival files. Medical examiner and coroner officers issue official determinations when supported by evidence. These documents specify cause, manner, and estimated time of death when available. Certificates are filed with state registries and transmitted to investigating agencies. Administrative systems rely on these records for status changes. In the absence of recovered remains, judicial proceedings may establish legal status. Families submit petitions, supported by affidavits and investigative documentation. Courts review these materials and issue rulings. Certified orders are forwarded to law enforcement and records offices for processing. After legal confirmation, administrative reclassification follows. Case management systems update status fields to reflect resolution. Authorization codes, timestamps, and approving officials are entered. System audit logs preserve these actions and prevent unauthorized modification. Evidence disposition is reviewed during final processing. Items designated for long-term retention remain in controlled storage. Other materials may be returned, transferred, or disposed of under policy. Transfer forms, receipts, and destruction certificates are filed. Chain of custody records are completed. Financial records are reconciled. Outstanding reimbursements, grants, and operational expenditures are reviewed by accounting units. Completion statements and audit summaries are issued. These documents remain linked to investigative files. Interagency notification accompanies reclassification. Partner organizations, national registries, and clearinghouses receive formal updates. Database synchronization reports confirm that changes have been applied across systems. Correspondence documenting these steps is archived. Family notification follows established protocols. Agencies conduct meetings, telephone briefings, or written correspondence. Communication logs record participants and content. Policies require that information be based on verified documentation. Copies of notification materials are preserved. Public communication may follow administrative updates. Press statements summarize official determinations and verification methods. Drafts, legal reviews, and final releases are stored together. Approval records identify responsible officials. Archival preparation begins after reclassification. Digital files are transferred to long-term repositories. Paper documents are boxed, labeled, and indexed. Retention schedules specify access conditions and review intervals. transfer documentation records custody changes. Automated monitoring systems continue to operate after status changes. Databases periodically compare resolved cases with unidentified remains and DNA systems. Alert evaluations are documented. Review notes explain how potential matches are handled. Quality assurance reviews examine resolution procedures. Internal auditors verify compliance with policy and completeness of records. Findings and corrective measures are documented. These materials form part of oversight archives. Legal risk management influences final documentation. Agencies ensure that records demonstrate procedural adherence and reasonable investigative effort. Summary narratives outlining operational history and decision-making are prepared and filed. Training programs reference resolved cases for instructional purposes. Redacted materials are used in policy review and scenario analysis. Training records document their use and distribution. Statistical reporting incorporates resolved files. Annual summaries categorize administrative outcomes. Supporting documentation remains available for verification. These reports inform planning and budgeting processes. Some files are classified as partially resolved. Identity may be confirmed without full reconstruction of events. Administrative annotations describe remaining uncertainties. These notes remain visible in archival systems. International coordination may be required in certain circumstances. Consular notifications, repatriation documents, and foreign registry updates are processed. Diplomatic correspondence is retained with investigative records. Digital preservation continues after administrative resolution. Files are migrated to updated platforms. Metadata is refreshed. Integrity checks are performed. Technical reports document preservation activities. Closing memoranda summarize procedural history. They reference major reviews, legal actions, and administrative changes. These documents provide context for future examination. Archived files remain subject to later inquiry. Family requests, academic research, and historical review generate additional correspondence. These materials are appended to existing records. Documentation standards emphasize verified information. Speculative material is excluded. Policies require clear separation between confirmed findings and unresolved elements. Supervisory review enforces compliance. Over time, resolved case files serve as reference materials. Analysts examine them for trend evaluation. Planners use them for operational assessment. Archivists maintain them as permanent records. Across jurisdictions, resolution procedures follow standardized frameworks. Identification, certification, administrative update, notification, and archival transfer appear in most files. These steps are reflected in consistent forms and guidelines. The completed file contains operational logs, maps, laboratory reports, correspondence, financial records, and review memoranda. Together, these materials document how the investigation was managed within institutional systems. In wilderness disappearance investigations, administrative resolution reflects verified status and documented procedure. It establishes how the case is recorded, preserved, and referenced across agencies. After status is updated, the file remains accessible within archives and databases. Its documentation continues to support oversight, research, and institutional continuity. Like this video, subscribe, and stay with us. More hidden cases and unanswered mysteries are coming. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.